There are some pretty good reasons out there that a lot of people like to stay away from the water, and it's that they've watched way too many films about sea monsters, kind of like the ones I'm about to show you today. Number 15. Deep Blue Sea.
Okay, hold on.
We start the list off with some genetically enhanced sharks who gained ridiculous abilities thanks to some strange experiments that had to do with Alzheimer's disease. In the movie, these monsters make the lives of a scientist and a cook quite impossible and difficult after these humans get trapped inside a top-secret oceanic lab. However, I wouldn't be too scared to watch this film if I was you. A funny theme song and some synchronized swimming sequences turn this horror film into a comedic one. Still, if a great white shark-sized mako shark found me, I'd still be pretty scared. Number 14. Creature from the Black Lagoon. Now let's go back to the olden times when films were still black and white, and let's revisit a classic, The Creature from the Black Lagoon. This film was presented to worldwide audiences in the old-school 3D film format. The film follows a group of marine biologists who were on an expedition in the Amazon River, where they found the Gill Man, a creature that haunted many audiences after it first appeared. Now, sure, it doesn't look that scary anymore, but it will always be remembered as a true example of sea monster horror. Number 13. Anaconda. Speaking of the Amazon River, there's another film that introduces us to a monster in the same setting. I'm of course talking about Anaconda. The title of the film immediately tells us who the main enemy is. It is a huge anaconda that made me become a bit more scared of snakes when I first watched this. Seriously, if you're already scared of snakes, this film is surely going to depict your worst nightmare. It's a gigantic reptile with a mind of its own that's determined to kill any human that gets in its path. Number 12. Piranha. Next we got a group of terrifying fish. They're not that large, no, but they do work together, and they can do some pretty awful things. Without further ado, it's the Piranha. And no, I don't mean the bad 3D film that came out a couple of years ago. I'm talking about the original one. The one from the 70s that could probably be considered a Jaws ripoff, honestly. Yet it still managed to make people wonder if they were safe in the water. The piranhas in this film were the result of an experiment used by the US government to win the Vietnam War. But for some reason, things got out of hand and the fish ended up being released near a summer camp. And I think you can imagine what happened there. They got tons of kids getting attacked by this school of killer fish. Real-life piranhas can't do what these monsters did, or at least that's what we know so far, but I personally prefer to stay away from piranhas just in case they're not the normal type. Number 11. The Shape of Water. Not all monsters are evil, and not all of them are out to get us, but that doesn't keep governments and big corporations from trying to catch them. In The Shape of Water, we meet a reptilian humanoid that literally came out of the water and fell in love with a deaf janitor. That does sound pretty sweet, except for the fact that some scientists have other plans for the strange creature. In comparison to the other monsters on this list, you can't expect this one to be wild and aggressive. He just wants to be loved. It just brings a tear to your eye. Except I actually don't exactly care about him. Either way, moving on, number 10. Tale of Tales. Certainly, this film is one of the most disturbing sea monster images ever seen in the big screen. But what's even more disturbing is seeing Salma Hayek eat the monster's heart just to become instantly pregnant. Okay, that's a weird sentence I never thought I'd actually say, but yes, that's right. In this film, her character is so desperate to become a mother that they feed her the monster's heart just so she can become one. Honestly, I don't know which is more terrifying, the monster or Salma Hayek. Number 9. Sweetheart. There's really nothing sweet about this film, and definitely nothing sweet about the monster that we get to see here. This film focuses on a mysterious young woman who's stranded on an island. It's honestly kind of like Castaway with a more mysterious main character, and plenty of twists that will keep you up at the edge of your seat. I guess the best way to describe it is that Castaway and Jaws had a film baby, and it's called Sweetheart. This massive creature only comes at night, but just by looking at all the dead fish around the protagonist, we can tell that this is a monster no one would like to have around, especially when that small island is the only place to stay safe. Number 8. Lake Placid. Getting into the big classics here. Most people would say this movie was successful thanks to Betty White, but the one who really steals the show is obviously that massive crocodile that can eat cows. Is the film scary though? Well, not really to me. Funny though, oh heck yeah. However, the idea of a crocodile this big is something that would totally make us freak out. That is if it was real. Number 7. Crawl. Since we're already talking about crocodiles, let's talk about the one in that movie called Crawl, which depicts what I would consider to be the nightmare of anybody living in Florida. It's not exactly one monster, but several hungry alligators, and it shows up during a hurricane, and it's up to a young woman and her father to fight the creature while the rest of the town is already evacuated, or, eaten. And what's scarier, the hurricane or the creatures? I'll let you be the judge on that. Number 6. Swamp Thing. Crocodiles ain't the only creatures that come from the swamp. There's also the famous Swamp Thing. There have been plenty of adaptations of this character, but the concept is pretty much the same. It's the story of a scientist who turns into the Swamp Thing after an evil person sabotaged an experiment. So, generally speaking, the Swamp Thing wasn't meant to be an evil character. He was simply the victim of someone's evil intentions. Still though, it's the kind of creature we want to stay away from. Number 5. Godzilla. Here's one you've probably been waiting for. Good old Godzilla. There have been many versions of this monster, but its origins are always the same. He's a giant lizard that was empowered by nuclear radiation, and we first saw him in 1954, and since then he's been in more than 30 different films. This monster lizard is considered the bad guy by people who don't know him too well, but the ones who do know him, like moi, know that Godzilla wants to protect our planet from other monsters as big as him, or just get into a nice scrap every now and then. Number 4. Underwater. This film is full of dark elements and some surprises that are typical of a sci-fi thriller. And of course it also has a lot of deadly sea monsters. However, the one you'll probably remember the most is the iconic Cthulhu who appears in the film, surrounded by other creatures who worship him. It's super creepy, and I guess it explains why underwater exploration is not a popular career today. No one wants to encounter something like this during their journeys. Number 3. The Host. This South Korean masterpiece introduces us to Gwomul, a large predator that came to life after an organism came into contact with pollutants in the Han River. The monster looks like a large amphibian, and it loves to stay near the water to catch humans and bring them down to its sewers. Even though the creature has a large jaw and many teeth, it seems like it prefers to ingest its food whole. The creature loves liquids, including gasoline, but its mortal enemy is fire, which is the one element it tries to stay away from, to no end for it. Now it's time for the day's best pick. We already saw some like the large crocodiles over in Lake Placid and the mythical Cthulhu in Underwater. Now it's time to check out the 2 other sea monsters that have haunted swimmers since they were first introduced. And let's start with number 2. Jaws. The scary thing about this monster is that it's an actual animal we're all familiar with, the great white shark. This is not a myth, nor is it a fantasy. It is an actual animal that lives in the ocean, and we've already seen what it can do to surfers and other swimmers who get far too close to it. For that reason alone, when the original film came out in 1975, people rushed into the movie theater to watch the film. However, their visits to the ocean were never the same again. You ever wonder why so many people are afraid of sharks? Well, this film is the one to blame for that. However, we all know that white sharks do attack, but their attacks are probably not as deadly as the ones we see in this film. They consider us far too crunchy and not meaty enough for their tastes. Number 1. The Meg.
I'm gonna make this thing bleed.
We finish our list with a monster way larger than the monsters we got so far, except for maybe Cthulhu. The Meg introduces us to the legendary Megalodon, a sea monster that went extinct millions of years ago. All starts when a group of explorers ventures into the Mariana Trench and their submarine is attacked by this massive sea monster. What you see in this film is what would happen if this creature came back to life in modern times. Probably. Certainly none of us would be ready to swim in the waters where an animal 10 times our size is swimming freely with a jaws that's capable of grabbing prey and breaking bones as easily as it would breathe air. Or water in this case. With all that being said, we're lucky these monsters only exist in movies, and we definitely hope things stay that way. I'm not ready to deal with any of them. Are you? Which sea monster is your favorite? Did we miss any? There are tons of movies about sea monsters, so please let us know which one is your favorite in the comments section down below. And with all that said and done, that's our video for today, folks, and I will see you all next time. Later, everybody.